2023.
Recording in progress.
Sorry about that. Thank you. We would like to hold a public hearing for the Tompkins Cortland Community College operating budget for 2023 through 2024. If you are here for a public comment, please step up to our microphone. Just going to wait for about 30 seconds or so. Make sure there's no one here for comment. Mike Lane?
If there's no comment, can I just make
Absolutely.
a comment and say that we did have a presentation from the president of TC3 and the chief financial officer a couple of meetings ago, and they've been working very hard on their budget, and this new budget does not include any increase in the sponsors' direct share.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing concerning the Tompkins Cortland Community College operating budget for 2023 through 2024. And if I can open the meeting for the Tompkins County Legislature, Tuesday, September 5th at 5:31. If you would please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We could have a roll call of members, please.
Mike Sigler.
Here.
Travis Brooks. Travis Brooks said he'll be late tonight. Randy Brown.
Here.
Amanda Champion. Susan Curry. Here. Deborah Dawson. Here. Rich John.
Here.
Dan Klein.
Here.
Ann Corman.
Here.
Mike Lane.
Here.
Greg Mezzi. Here. Veronica Pillar.
Here.
Lee Shirtliff.
Here.
Shauna Black.
Here.
13 members present.
Thank you. Next, we are going to move to the presentation of proclamations. And we do have one proclamation this evening. Whereas the Friendship Donation Network, FDN, began in 1988 with a simple hope from the founder, Sarah Pines, to not waste food that might otherwise be thrown out by local supermarkets. And whereas in 2010, Sarah Pines assembled a volunteer board of directors to continue the work she'd been doing for 22 years, officially incorporated the organization as a 501c3 nonprofit organization with a part-time coordinator being hired to manage its daily operations. And whereas the Friendship Donations Network is celebrating its 35th year of continuous operation in 2023, and whereas the mission of the Friendship Donations Network is to rescue food, reducing hunger for Tompkins County residents and some neighboring communities in need. And whereas FDN provides food donations to hunger relief programs that serve more than 2,000 people a week and divert over 1,000 pounds of good food for local landfill every day. And whereas every year FDN's grassroots network of almost 200 volunteers rescue about 500,000 pounds of fresh food. And whereas food for FDN's redistribution network comes from dozens of donors, supermarkets, farmers, restaurants, caterers, colleges, community members, and is shared with people in partnership with over 50 food distribution partners, including free meal plans, food pantries, low-income housing communities, community organizations, and grassroots distribution, assisting families and individuals experiencing food security throughout the Finger Lakes region. And whereas FDN's people-powered approach to an impact on community food rescue and distribution systems includes a commitment to simplicity of operations while extending full dignity to every person encountered. And whereas local residents, businesses, and foundations are the entire support of FDN's activities via their time and their financial donations. And whereas FDN educates consumers about preparing, storing, and using food to make nutritious meals and reducing food waste that contributes to greenhouse gas emissions. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Tompkins County Legislature proclaims September 14th, 2023 as Friendship Donations Network Day. in Tompkins County, and further, Tompkins County recognizes the Friendship Donations Network for their 35 years of leadership and vision in food rescue to serve those in need across our community, as well as for serving as a model for other food rescue and redistribution organizations across the region, and most of all, for meeting human needs with care, dignity, and a highly leveraged efficiency. In witness whereof, I, Shauna Black, have hereunto set my hand and caused to be affixed the Great Seal of Tompkins County, State of New York, on this September 5th, 2023. And Mr. Bruce Estes is here to accept the proclamation. You want to say a few words?
I'm the president of the board of the FDN, and I really do want to thank you all for doing this. You know, part of my previous incarnation as the editor of the journal, I consider this my payback role for some of the not perfect things that I did as the editor of the local paper. So thank you again very much.
And I would like to make an announcement for this evening. We will have executive session in accordance with Article 7, Section 105 of the Public Officers Law. This body will enter into executive session for the discussion of two matters concerning the medical, financial, credit, or employment history of a particular person or corporation, or matters leading to the appointment, employment, promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of a particular person or corporation, and the proposed acquisition, sale, or lease of real property, or the proposed acquisition of securities, or sale or exchange of securities held by such public body, but only when publicity would substantially affect the value thereof. Now it is time for privilege of the floor for the public, and I just want to go over the rules for speaking under privilege of the floor. Number 1, I agree to a 3-minute time limit. Number 2, I agree not to raise my voice. Number 3, I agree not to use lewd, obscene, profane, slanderous, or libelous language, or speak or act in a manner that would tend to incite a breach of the peace. Number 4, I agree not to speak about county personnel matters. Personnel matters include comments about the job performance of named county employees other than elected officials. Number 5, after 3 minutes, I agree to leave the microphone and yield the floor. Transferring time to another person is not permitted. And number 6, I agree that if I cause a disruption and am asked to leave, I will leave the chambers. Our first person is Robert Lynch.
Good evening. Robert Lynch, Town of Enfield, member of the Enfield Town Board. I'm speaking here tonight as a citizen. I've spoken on this topic before, and I'm going to address it again tonight, and it's concerning the center of government that you're proposing. There's a resolution on your agenda tonight that says that the county should proceed with plans for a center of government building and allocate funds for design, architectural engineering for such a building. I would recommend that you not do it. It's not that you shouldn't do it ever. It's just that you shouldn't do it right away. It's premature to act tonight, I believe, and I think I have sound reasons behind that. I'm going to draw an analogy that may seem kind of strange, but I think it fits. Down in Washington, some members of Congress are thinking about drafting a resolution for an impeachment inquiry of President Biden. And they don't really know why they want to impeach him. They don't really know the grounds for it, but why not go ahead and do it anyway, and we'll see what happens. Wise observers have said that once you go down that path, it's hard to turn around. That if you have an impeachment inquiry, pretty soon you've got an impeachment vote, pretty soon you've got an impeachment. And I would argue the same is here, because what will happen is you'll do the design. Well, you're down that chute, and the chute gets narrower and narrower, and it's harder to turn around, and you say, well, I guess we better go ahead and build the building. And I would argue that if you approve this resolution tonight, it's only a matter of time that you better believe you'll be building the building. I think there's a good reason to have second thoughts about this, because a lot of people in this county don't really know what's being planned. I campaigned along with Randy Brown 2 years ago down in Enfield and Newfield for county legislature, and most of the constituents I met said, what? They're planning an office building? And back then it was $20 million. Then last year, it got to be 32. Now they're talking 40 million. And I bet you by the time you build it, it's going to be 50 or 60 million dollars, if not more. And I think they're creative alternatives. For example, the shops at Ithaca Mall. CMC has seen fit to retro a little bit of that building for its use. Why couldn't the county do the same? Or Herald Square. I understand there's a lot of unused space there. Maybe that would work. One thing more before I leave, and this is a plea, please, to your facilities department and to you as a legislature. Please do something about taking that obscene graffiti off the side of the Wally Wiggins building. It's an insult to this county. It's an insult to the reputation of an attorney I very much respect, Wally Wiggins, and you really should clean up that building to clean up your own county's image. Please, please, think before you act on this resolution tonight, and I wish you well. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Amanda Kirch-Gessner.
Hello, good evening. My name's Amanda Kirch-Gessner. I live at 4471 Jacksonville Road in the town of Ulysses. I'm here tonight to talk about public safety and how it actually seems to work at the county level. I've been following a lot of the issues at the local, like at the city level, and it is an effing disaster. The local police force is probably understaffed by about half right now. I'm somebody who doesn't hesitate to call non-emergency dispatch. I don't know if anybody else in the room has ever done so. Maybe it's a byproduct of my privilege, but I always get a live body who's happy to help direct me to the resource to help me address the need. Whether it be limbs in the road that's too busy for me to like stop and move the limbs myself, they'll get DPW out there, they'll direct an officer to remove a deer from the roadway, you name it. But I just want to point to what a good job Derek Osborne's doing. In the past year, I've had the pleasure to interact with 3 different deputies on 3 very different occasions, and I have to say, his department is stand up, and I want to encourage you to invest in the resiliency of the local sheriff's department. I know that one of the things that would help Derek the most, honestly, is investing in a local facility where he could train his own deputies. And when you talk about local public safety, what better way to invest in our community than investing in a local infrastructure to not only, recruit and hire local people from this community, but to train them right here with our own protocols. You would know better than I if there were any disciplinary actions happening within the sheriff's department, but in speaking with his deputies on these 3 different occasions, all they speak of is how much respect they have for him, how honest he is, how transparent he is in the organization of his office, and how, they couldn't be more proud to work in their department. That's what we need right now, especially with the situation going on in the city of Ithaca, where there is a lot of tumult. They're losing officers left and right. We need to invest in what is working, and the sheriff's department under the direction of Derek Osborne is working, and it's working very well. Yeah, thanks for being here. Thanks for listening. Yeah, I like our local elected sheriff a lot. I'm sure he picks up when all of you call, because that's the kind of responsiveness I see in his department. Yeah, please work to keep our community safe. I've had lots of less desirable experiences with state troopers. I haven't had many experiences with the Ithaca police lately. I don't see them ever, but the deputies I see out all over the county as I travel through it, and yeah, they are the people who respond to unintended deaths when I have concerns and stuff like that. They're just great. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. Next is Sherry Corthias.
Hello, Sherry Corti, City of Ithaca. It's been since, I think, 2019 since I've seen you guys. And I spoke out against the convention center, which ended up getting approved before we locked down, and I haven't been back since. In the meantime, City Center has sold for $75 million. I'm here to ask that you put a moratorium on tax abatements or your development so you guys can figure out just how much tax dollars you are losing, because I only did the city center project because they were sold for $75 million, and we let them keep the pilot project. We didn't make them pay any of our taxes that we lost back. So I thought I'd let you know how much we've lost in taxes, just in property taxes since 2019 through 2022. My actual county taxes were supposed to be $3,628,065, and city center actually paid from 2019 to 2022 $250,000 in pilot payments, $974. Since 2019 through 2022, we've lost $3,377,091 just on the city project, and it goes through 2029. So, you know, you talk about all this development and all this stuff you want to do here, but we're losing tax money. I've got all these figures from the authority's budget office. You can go online and go to their statements and read the statements, and this is just one project. So you guys need to think, with the budget crisis we have going on, that maybe this program's outlived its purpose. There's no reason we need to attract developers anymore. It's already attractive enough. Second, and I'll leave it at that, I've spoken to the city about it, this flag, this Ukrainian, is that I hope that's not what that is. My father was in the Cuban Missile Crisis when it was on a B-52, and I grew up on military bases, and we shouldn't be flying a Ukrainian flag. They're Nazis. We're fighting. It's a terrible war. We're in World War III right now, and I'm sorry, but we have to pay attention because they have the oil. John McCain called it. Russia was a gas station. They're just a big gas station because they have the resources to survive themselves, and we were never supposed to go to war with Russia and China. And I would like a resolution in the future, if you guys could investigate what's going on for real, that says that we want to rejoin the START Treaty, because by 2026, if this START Treaty is not if we've not got this fixed, we won't be here, and my 3 grandchildren won't be here, and none of us will be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Zach Wynn.
Good afternoon. My name's Zach Wynn. I'd like to say that Sherry is right. American taxpayer dollars are going to fund Nazis in Ukraine. And I'm not talking about Charlottesville Nazis. I'm talking about Wehrmacht, Berlin-type Nazis. On another issue, it is clear that there is an effort underway to bring a return to masks, COVID protocols, and lockdowns on a national scale. And the signs are everywhere, and I want to make it clear to the legislature that a return to these impositions on individual liberty are unacceptable, and that I will not be cooperating. In the past, I was removed from this room by law enforcement for refusing to wear a mask. I have been kicked off the TCAP bus system and threatened with a ban. In those instances, I went quietly and politely. I want to assure the legislature that in the future, if you allow forced masking on public transportation, in public meetings, or in workplaces, I will no longer be polite and quiet about it. I work a manual labor job. I walk routinely 5 to 8 miles a day while working. Greg Mezzi has seen me at my job hauling pots and pans up a flight of stairs all night. Wearing a mask is easy when all you do is sit around all day in meetings. Masks are an attack on the lower class and do nothing to prevent COVID. On another note, the kidnapping and murder of Thomas Rath is yet another indication of the out-of-control situation in Ithaca's drug encampments. 11 have been arrested so far. I am sure many of you have heard the same rumors that I have, with several independent sources indicating to me that Rath was killed on video and possibly tortured to death. The truth of this will come out in time. For now, what is certain is that things are out of control, and swift action on the part of the county is required to stop the needless deaths from overdoses and violence. The city cannot be relied upon to manage this crisis, and the legislature must act soon before more people die. Thank you very much, and I yield the remainder of my time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here to speak on privilege of the floor? If you are, if you could fill out a blue form at the back of the room on the table, and please send it forward. Just wait about 15 seconds. Okay. Next, we are going to move to municipal officials, and I see that George McGonigal is here from the city of Ithaca. Hi, George. Welcome to the legislature.
Hi, should I go to this one?
Sure.
Good evening, everyone. It's good to see Wayne and Marcia's daughter here. Hi, Holly. I'm going to wing it tonight. Imagine that. Things we're working at, we have our monthly meeting tomorrow night, and some of the voting items are, we're going to vote to whether or not to fund a study about the Ithaca gun smokestack to see if it's sound and if we're able to keep it, and hopefully it is sound, but we'll find that out with this study. We're going to vote on new salaries for the mayor, which is going to be a lower salary because the city manager will take a lot of the responsibility that the mayor has now. We're going to vote on common council salaries, which are going to be $5 more than the county legislator salaries.
Well deserved.
And we're going to vote on a template for the city manager position, what their duties are, and how we hire them, and how many votes it takes to hire them, how many votes it takes to fire them. It's a big, complicated scenario that we'll be voting on tomorrow. Things we're working on that we won't vote on tomorrow are 3 union labor contracts, which are progressing well, I'll say, but they're not finalized. We're working on whether the amount of money Cornell contributes to the city, whether they contribute anything. That continues. And we are working on the endless work involved in creating a land use policy for city land that is currently being occupied by homeless encampments. That's all I've got.
Any questions for George? Mike Sigler?
Hi, Joyce. I have a couple questions.
You can only have one.
Just one? Oh, man. The Ithaca gun smokestack, I mean, isn't that, it's owned by the developer, right? I mean, why is it the city's, I mean, if he wants to keep it, wouldn't it be his responsibility to kind of pay for that?
We're splitting the cost of the study. I think the people of the city want to keep it. And there's been talk of actually creating a spot that would honor working people in the city, but also the surrounding area who worked at factory jobs in the city at that site. So splitting the cost is, I think, a valuable investment.
The city manager position, was that supposed to start at the beginning of 2024? Or?
Yes.
So, I mean, that doesn't seem likely that you'll find somebody by January. I mean, it hasn't been posted yet. So what happens? Doesn't the law say it has to start by 2024, or does it give you some leeway?
I think...
Not that you'll be there, so you don't.
Right. Well, hopefully we'll find somebody by the 1st of January. And if we don't find a permanent person, we'll have to hire a temporary person.
My last question, I read an article about the wastewater treatment, and it was about $6 million. I mean, I don't know. I talked to a lot of federal guys and state guys. It seems like there's a lot of money floating around for wastewater. I didn't know if the city was putting in for grant money for that, if it didn't have the manpower to do that, if maybe some help could be offered to the city for that. Because it really is, that's one of those things that I always, like I watch the grants come down and I'm like, wow, the city of Geneva is getting X for its wastewater treatment. It seems like that's something that people do want to fund, so I just didn't know if that's what the city was going for.
I'm not sure either, but I'd love to talk to you more about that, because every time we turn around, we find something else that's about ready to give up the ghost at the wastewater treatment plant.
That's every wastewater. They were all about 50 years old.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. All right, we will. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Next is Randy Brown and then Rich John.
Hello, George.
Hey, Randy.
You've talked quite a bit over the last year and a half about the homeless problem and the encampments. And I don't want to put you on the spot, but what do you think the county's role should be in moving this thing forward?
I'm glad you've mentioned that. Where we're at right now is we are talking about having what we're calling a green zone, where it's city property, that we would allow camping. And currently the area we're talking about is behind Walmart and the county transfer station. And that's a big parcel, and there's quite a few encampments there already. And what we're talking about is providing movable trailers that would have real toilets and real showers with hot running water. And in addition to that, hopefully, storage units so people can store their stuff, help in moving people, because people do have a lot of stuff. And what was the other thing? Safe places to deposit hypodermic needles, and other things that would make life easier. The city is willing to let the land be used for that and prepare the land for that, like with electric and plumbing. And what we are going to ask the county to do is provide funds to basically provide these services. And as you all know, social services is part of the county job. Job's not the right word. So we definitely are looking for help, guidance, like cooperation in setting it up, but also definitely financial assistance.
Let's see here, Rich John, Veronica Pillar, and Mike Sigler.
George, thank you once again for coming and speaking with us. I realize we only have so many more meetings. You're going to be with us. But
well, you can look forward to that.
I do, absolutely. I wanted to add my voice to those who are saying it really, I think it makes great sense to get that feasibility study for the smokestack. It is clearly part of our history. Good or bad, it's part of our history, and we should, I believe, recognize it and try to preserve it if we can. Thanks.
Thank you.
Veronica Pillar?
Just a clarifying question. I thought the city manager job had been posted, or at least I've seen a brochure with instructions for applying.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Okay, I thought someone said the opposite.
I must have said the opposite.
Maybe.
Like, if you're still working on the job description.
Mike, can you use your mic? Mike, thanks.
I just assume since they're still working on the job description, it's hard to post.
Well, we're voting on it. It's all set. We're just going to vote on it.
Okay.
Thank you, Veronica.
Mike Sigler?
My other question is, you had said you would like the county to provide funds for services. Do you want us to provide funds for services, or do you want us to provide those services? I know it may be nuanced, but I don't think it actually is all that nuanced. Like, do you expect us to provide money so that the city can do these services? But we already do the services. So you just want us to go down and do the services, right?
Well, there'd be more services than you provide now. Somebody has to be hired to monitor the showers and the restrooms. And we're hoping for county support for that. And yes, there would be one advantage for the county, I believe, is that the services you provide now would be more easily provided in a more centralized location.
So do you think that, I don't want to keep it any longer, I'm sorry, but would there be objection, do you think, from the city council if those services were provided by the county? Like if the county provided the person to drive the showers down there and bring them home at night? That doesn't have to be a city person, does it?
No, it does not. And right now, our DPW is so understaffed that it would be tough to find somebody in the city to do that.
And would the city have objection to the county providing security for those people, our workers, if they're going to be going into the jungle?
I can't speak for everybody on council, but I don't think that would be objected to.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Greg Messy? Okay. George, I also want to make sure, I did send a personal statement on behalf of the chair for a response to the homeless plan that you guys had put out. I want to make sure that you and your colleagues had received that. And it talked about the duties of the county as noted with state and federal law, the different services we provide. And I'm not sure that that would necessarily change, under the idea that you guys have brought forth.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Okay.
I know that from the get-go, we've talked about cooperating. This is too big a job for just the city or just the county to deal with.
I think, unfortunately, the frustration, and I probably will speak for this legislature, is that the Common Council has been all over the place. And there's no collaboration, there's no consensus on how to move forward with the homeless situation in the encampments.
I think that's an overstatement.
Okay, well, I think we can probably agree to disagree on that. And I think we haven't wanted to step on toes, and we've tried to let the process play out. And we've also, I think we've spoken by allocating $100,000 in our most recent budget to helping the city. And the one thing we've asked is to be part of the process. And then once you have a plan, to actually come back to this legislature and talk to us about what your thoughts are and how we could use that funding.
I thought that's what I was just doing. And we also put out $100,000.
Right, I know, but what I'm saying though is that I don't think we've had that discussion. I don't think we've had the discussions to move forward.
I know for a fact that city staff and county staff have had several meetings. I know for a fact that council there's some disagreement about where people should not camp, but there is general agreement that there should be this sanctioned encampment in the Southwest, and that's what we want to move forward with.
I just hope it moves forward because, I think we're all having the same concern right now that as of January 1st, much of your council is going to turn over, and it would really be a shame for all of us to take a huge leap backwards. Because, as we've heard, there are residents that are dying there. There's a lot going on there, and I know you're the first person that people are reaching out to. But we've got to make some movement on this, and I know I don't need to tell you that, George.
No, I agree.
Any other comments from?
What can I ask you? What do you want me to bring to you next month?
I would like to hear more about the encampments. We talk about red, amber, green. People are afraid to use the word enforcement. Like, where are we going with this? You know, I get it that you want to allow certain people to stay certain places, but the reality is that it's not safe down there. People that live in the city of Ithaca, people that are visiting, they don't feel safe walking on our commons. They don't feel safe walking to Wegmans, to living in you know, even Nate's Estates. I mean,
That's the first ward. I'm very much aware of that.
yeah, you know, and so it's, you know, I think it, you know, it speaks to our community. And, you know, you've lived here a long time. I've lived here a long time. You know, it's a sad state of affairs whenever I don't feel good about my kids hanging out downtown, you know? And I just hope we can move the needle at some point, because I know we've gone back and forth and it becomes very political, and some people don't want to say enforcement, some people do. I mean, we need to figure out where we want to land and then kind of work backwards if we need to.
That whole argument over the word enforcement is behind us, I'm pretty sure, for whatever that's worth. Yeah, we're anxious to move forward, and even if how we move forward turns out to be partially a mistake, we need to do it and find out. We can't keep going where we're at right now, because it's getting worse.
I mean, I think, you know, and we'll go out for a drink at some point. We've discussed this for probably 4.5 years about going out and talking about this. But, you know, I think, you know, at some point asking the county to step up. I mean, we're facing a budget where we're going to have a lot of really hard decisions in our budget too. And, you know, we're talking about staffing. And, you know, it's not just a matter of let the county do it, because the numbers aren't there. The tax dollars aren't there. I mean, we're facing some of the same struggles that the city is. And so, you know, I think we want to be helped and we want to figure out the solution to this. But, you know, the reality is it's not just a matter of like, you know, we don't have the staff in our DPW to do it. Can the county do it? Because I don't think that's an option. I think we're going to have to figure out, you know, real solutions and come together and figure out the money part. So there are a few people that want to talk. Veronica, Deborah, did you have your hand up as well? Okay. And Rich.
Yeah, thank you. I attended part of the Planning and Economic Development Committee, that's what it's called, right? Meeting the last one where you all discussed the encampment policy at length, and then I kind of skimmed the part I missed. So I'm not qualified to summarize it, but I think a lot of the issues that Shauna brought up and that we've been talking about, the like, where can people camp and the enforcement word, like, were discussed at length at that meeting. And if I recall correctly, you all ended with, like, you know, giving some direction to staff on like what particular to do next. So I wonder if next month what might be helpful is if you bring a clear summary of that meeting.
Okay.
Plus anything the staff has done between then in the past and then in the future.
Thank you. That's helpful. I will attempt to do that.
Deb Dawson and Rich Strum.
Yeah, thank you. George, you said that arguments over enforcement and the word are behind you. The last thing I read didn't suggest to me that you had landed on any particular agreement as to how exactly you were going to regulate where people camped. And so explain to me how that debate is behind the county.
I didn't say that debate is behind us. I said there was an argument over using that particular word.
Well, I mean, you can argue over semantics all you want, but at the end of the day, any kind of regulatory scheme, anything that you set up that is going to require people to be in one place as opposed to another place isn't going to work unless you have some kind of mechanism to enforce it. I mean, I don't know if you want to call it a purple elephant, but you're still enforcing.
Well, currently, it is illegal to camp on any city property. So if we...
but you don't enforce it.
We don't enforce it. No, we don't. And so if we create this green zone where camping is sanctioned with amenities that the county will help us set up. There's two trains of thought, and I don't necessarily agree with some of it, but one train of thought is that it will make it more likely that people move there voluntarily. It is the biggest city property that we're talking about.
That's the carrot,
Yes.
but you also need a stick.
Okay, so the other thing that, and we have not resolved this, and there is disagreement about it, is how do you prevent people from camping in places that currently are extremely problematic, when the things that Shauna were talking about, basically crime, and that's closer to Nate's Floral Estates. And that's also behind Lowe's. So the thinking is that none of this is going to happen before winter. And when winter comes, the vast majority of people who are encamped go to hotels and motels with the state blue, code blue. So as this last winter, for example, everything behind Lowe's cleared out. There was nobody there. And that's when we cleaned up the area behind, or between Brindley Street and Cecil A. Malone Drive, with your help. And we used part of our $100,000 to fence that off, and it's no longer being camped on. That didn't solve the problem area-wide, obviously. But I think after the winter, it will be easier to determine where people can and can't camp. And I'm thinking in particular, this is me talking personally, the small city property behind Lowe's, which is where the young man was kidnapped from, will be off limits.
Which still begs the question, how are you going to make sure it's off limits and it stays off limits? And that, I think that's, for me, that's the crux of this whole problem. But I'm not speaking for 14 people, I'm just speaking for myself.
It's going to be a problem we're going to have to face.
Rich John?
Thank you, Shauna. Yeah, Shauna, I think you summed it up well. And this has been such a long-standing issue. I did want to just make sure that anybody watching from the public knows, George, this has been an issue you've paid tremendous attention to for years now. And I think you've been very consistent in your approach of what you personally would like to see happen, and you've been a strong voice there, and I commend you for that. I did also watch that PEDC, Planning Economic Development Committee, the public comment, and then the comment of the members after. And that's where I felt it got pretty confusing. You know, and I found it a bit challenging to understand, was there any real direction that came out of that? I hope that I didn't watch the whole meeting. Maybe there's something that developed later, but this is an issue where I believe the county and the city have responsibilities, and we absolutely need to work together. I also think that it's an area where the city has to lead, that the county can't really do very much independently of the city, and we shouldn't. But if the city can find its way through to a clear policy, I'm hopeful that the legislature here, my colleagues, will help support a reasonable pathway. But That's it. But thank you for your work on it, George.
Well, you've worked on it too. And I learned most of this from Carmen Guidi and from Deb Wilkie, who've been working in the jungle for decades. And they know a little bit more about it than the Ithaca Tenants Union. So that's where I'm getting my guidance from. And, you know, I don't have any magic answers. We're just getting started, and we're going to try to get people more comfortable and safer in this sanctioned encampment. And at the same time, support the creation of housing that's affordable and with services, and both the city and the county are working towards that. The conference center next to City Hall is supposed to have 30 or 40 apartments for people who are currently homeless or almost homeless. So it's got to be a multi-pronged effort. And I know, you know, homelessness is not just a city issue. It's throughout the county now. Maybe we could make a law that says rent's $300 a month everywhere. Maybe that would work. I don't know. I will try to come back with a lot more detail next month.
Randy Brown.
George, aren't you glad I brought this up?
I am, actually. I am, because it's on everybody's mind.
And I think it is. It's very complex, and thank you for working on it. As one legislator, I'm anxious to help any way the county is able to do that, and we just need a plan to start from. So thank you.
I appreciate that, Randy.
Okay, George, I think we've beat the crap out of you enough. Thank you.
No, this is, I don't feel that.
Thank you very much. We do appreciate you.
All right.
Have a good night.
You too.
Okay, next up, I don't see any other. Robert Lynch, do you have an update as a municipal official this evening?
I would just like to say that for the town of Enfield, we're in a state of transition right now with our fire service. We have transitioned from the town board being the lead agency, if you will, in overseeing the Enfield Volunteer Fire Company, and we have transitioned that to a fire district, which is a board of fire commissioners in charge now, and we are in the process of moving to that new model, which requires a public referendum, which is going to be held on the 12th of September, and there'll be a public hearing tomorrow night, in fact, in Enfield, to discuss increasing what's called the statutory spending limit, which would otherwise limit very strictly how much money we in Enfield could budget for our fire protection services. I won't go into greater detail on that, but it is an important issue, and that's the biggest transition we're undertaking right now in Enfield. And there'll be an election in December for 5 fire commissioners. Our town board appointed the initial 5 at our August meeting, but those only serve until the end of the year. After that, there's a referendum, well, I should say there's an election on the 12th of December, which would make the 5 permanent fire commissioners who might, to some extent, replace those that we have appointed so far. But it's a change. We decided we needed it for a multitude of reasons. Each of our town board members had a different rationale for it. I had mine, the supervisor had hers, others expressed their own. And we decided it was the time to do it. We originally, the town board, I think back in 2007, had considered this transition to a fire district and did not proceed with it. This time we did, and I'll keep you informed as to how that progresses. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Mr. Lynch, any questions for Robert Lynch? Okay, we thank you for attending tonight. And now it is time for legislator privilege of the floor. Mike Sigler?
Lansing Carnival this weekend. It's going to be great. So Saturday is the action of the carnival. The parade will be on Saturday at 6 p.m. I will be in a dunking booth. So
What time is that?
time on Saturday. A good portion of it. The principal of Lansing will also be, I think.
Time and address? Definitely an incentive, Mike.
And how much are the
Hazel
tickets?
will be around, so another incentive to go to the Lansing Carnival. What else? Just, there'll be fireworks, I think, at night, and, you know, there are rides and funnel cake. So please come on out. It's a fun time, and love to see you.
What time will you be in the dunking?
I have to find out. I would tell you.
Asking for a friend.
I'm sure it's to raise money for something.
It's behind the fire station.
It's right where the clams are sold, so you can get clams there. It's right behind the fire station, yeah.
Right.
Yep, the main fire station right there on Ridge Road, right before you get to Carter.
What time does it start?
Well, the parade is at 6. Carnival kind of is all day, and then at night, rides get that. We'll see here.
Thank you, Mike. Anyone else? Mike Lane?
Thank you. Have some sad news, and that is that we've had the death of 2 people, the deaths of 2 people, I should say, who were former county residents, one of whom was Janet Steiner, who was our library director. Janet served from 1993 until she retired in 2009 as our library director, and she was there when the legislature accepted the gift of the building where the library is now, which used to be Woolworths, and authorized a $6.5 million capital program to outfit the library. Janet was a fierce advocate for library services. She served at New York State level on many committees. She wanted us to have a first-class library. She wanted us to have the staffing for a first-class library. She wanted to work with the friends and the volunteers. And she left a mark that was a good mark for the county. She was married to Ed Kochlenberg, who was the, among other things before he retired, was the chair of the Department of Economics at Binghamton University. In 2017, after living for many years in the Danby area, they moved to Pittsford, New York, and that was, I think, in 2017. Janet fought a brave battle against cancer, and she died on August 1st, just one day after Ed died, on July 31st. So both of them have left us. They were both great members of the community. We always saw them together, doing so much and volunteering, so many things. I did want to bring that to everybody's attention and to mention that there's apparently going to be a celebration of life for Janet at the Unitarian Church in Rochester, New York, on September 24th. And if there are any gifts that folks would like to give in Janet's memory, they can be made to the Tompkins County Public Library Foundation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Greg Muzzy and Susan Curry.
Yeah, a couple of other happenings in relation to what Mike Sigler was saying. The Ellis Hollow Fair at the Ellis Hollow Community Center is from noon to 5, also on Saturday, September 9th. So there's a lot of different activities and fun to be had by all.
You'll be in the dunk tank when?
You know, unfortunately I wasn't asked to be in the dunk tank, but if anybody's watching, happy to sign myself up for next year. I will be there, and then also hoping to hit the Lansing Carnival as well. And then there's also the Freeville Harvest Festival, which is, I believe, 10 till 2.
I think that's right.
In Freeville. So you can start in Freeville and work your way back around to Lansing via Ellis Hollow. It's a fun-filled family day for all. So thanks.
Best of us to the rest of us.
Yes.
Thank you, Greg. Susan Curry?
I just wanted to add a couple more things about Janet Steiner. She was very visionary. I don't know if people know that Tompkins County Public Library under Janet's leadership is the first library in the state to automate circulation instead of filling out those little cards. It sounds funny now because everything's automated, but it was a big deal. She was the first one to do it, and Cornell was working at Cornell. They sent me down to learn from her how to do it for Cornell. And she also was visionary in terms of that repurposing the Woolworths building. It was an early initiative in terms of sustainability and not just tearing down old buildings. And under her leadership, that was done, and she was awarded an architectural, I can't remember the exact thing, but it was the American Library Association awards only a few of those, so she did a really great job.
Thank you, Susan. And Corman?
Thank you. Sorry to say you've missed the Trumansburg Fair that already happened, but I just wanted to say to my colleague, Legislator Sigler, that if any of my other colleagues would have said they were going to be in a duck tank, I would have also asked for the date and time. So I just want to let you know and warn my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. You're an equal opportunity dunker.
Yes.
Okay. Anyone else? Rich, John?
I just wanted to note tomorrow at the shops at Ithaca Mall, there's the Department of Emergency Response and Red Cross Blood Drive and Emergency Preparedness Fair. And, I believe that's 1 to 5 at the shops at Ithaca Mall. And also on Sunday is the Family and Children's Services 5th Annual Cardboard Boat Race. And that's a fun event. It's down at the Ithaca Yacht Club in the afternoon. And I believe they have over 40 boats, which some will reach the finish line and some may not. Anyway, it's a fun thing.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, thank you. I have a pretty short chair's report this evening. I also want to add my voice to condemning the terrible kidnapping and killing of Thomas Rath. And I want to extend a thanks to law enforcement officers from the region for their investigation and the work and for apprehending those that are responsible. Any act of targeted violence is unacceptable, but to see such a terrible crime committed in a coordinated fashion against such a vulnerable person in our community really is sickening. Rath lived in one of our homeless encampments in Ithaca, and his killing is a terrible reminder of the urgency for addressing the safety of the jungle and addressing targeted violence anywhere in Tompkins County. 11 arrests have been made following the tireless effort by local and state police agencies, and I want to thank those members of the public who have shared information with our law enforcement. Everyone in Tompkins County deserves to feel safe. I also want to thank those who contributed to the arrest of those responsible for this tragedy. I also want to bring forth, we have had some Legionnaires here in Tompkins County, and I would like to, I've asked Frank Krupa to attend our meeting to talk about some of the cases. Although he can't get into specifics, he can provide us with an update this evening. Frank, are you with us?
Can you hear me, Shauna?
We sure can.
Okay, hi, thank you for the introduction and the opportunity. As Shauna has mentioned, we have had what is called a cluster of Legionellosis cases here in the county. There is some good news. The incubation period for Legionellosis is 2 to 14 days. and we are at day 15 since the onset of symptoms of our last case. So we'd like to see 2 incubation periods pass before we say we're completely, in the clear on this cluster. So a couple of more weeks, but being 2 weeks through is good news on that front. So wanted to start there. But we have had 12 cases, including unfortunately 1 death. We are doing a lot of investigation in coordination with the New York State Department of Health on cooling towers. Cooling towers are regulated now in New York State and have been for about 5 or 6 years. They are not the only source for Legionella clusters, but they are one that we can check. So all of the towers have been checked within the city of Ithaca that could be of impact to this cluster. They are checked initially with PCR testing, which is a screening test, essentially telling us if it is there or not. It doesn't tell us whether it's live or not, and whether or not it is connected to the cases. So, but it is a kind of an initial test. Most of the towers that did test positive for presence in the screening test have been disinfected. The ones that haven't were because there were other mitigating factors that made the New York State Department of Health feel like it was unnecessary. But from that perspective, the cooling towers are generally moving towards being completely disinfected, so we can rule out them as a future potential transmission source. After the screening test, then cultures are run to determine is it live virus or dead virus from the screening. So those culture tests are in the works. It takes a little while, but disinfection was recommended based off of screening. So we're already taking the precautionary steps from that perspective. The final step to move from a cluster to what would be labeled an outbreak would be us being able to link a source to an individual case. And that requires genome mapping, where the serogroup is mapped to see if it is a match to one of the sources that's been tested. That takes a while. So we're probably still a week or 2 away from the first results coming back from that to know for sure if there was a direct connection to a cooling tower. I will say that, as I said before, cooling towers aren't the only source, right? But they are a place for us to look and check. So we may see a direct connection to one of the cooling towers, or we may not. And a potential outcome is that we may never find a source associated with the cases directly. So I just want to prepare folks, that could be an outcome. But the testing is ongoing. New York State Department of Health has a Legionella testing team that has come in and has been supporting doing the testing of the cooling towers and getting the samples and such to Wadsworth. And Cuyahoga Health Systems, the hospital, has been collecting sputum samples when possible from the cases to send to Wadsworth for testing and comparison as well. So that's everything that's underway and what we know so far. And I guess I'll just bookend with the good news that I started with, that we are past a first incubation period, and we're looking forward to another 2 weeks without any more cases to hopefully be able to say we're in the clear from this cluster.
Thank you, Frank. I have to say we haven't missed seeing you at our meetings.
I can appreciate.
You can appreciate that?
Thanks for that report, Frank. I see Arel Lamaro, our Director of Facilities, is on. Arel, are you there? Well, maybe not, but I was going to ask him what our protocols are for the county buildings as far as our cooling towers. There he is.
Yes, hello. Yes, we test our towers regularly, and we put bacteria, we control bacteria monthly. We have a vendor that does that, third-party vendor, Integrated Water Management, that does that for us. They tested, I think, end of July, and it either as a part of this process, Frank mentioned, they've sanitized towers. We have 3 cooling towers. We have mental health, human services building, and the public safety building. So those were sanitized, I think, a little over a week ago. And I think they'll be retesting either this week or early next week.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Frank or Rorel? Deborah Dawson?
Yeah, this is going to be a bit of a change of subject. I apologize. But I've been reading now that we're anticipating perhaps a resurgence of COVID and the possibility that it will be this Pirola variant. And I was wondering if we had contingency plans in place. I would hate to see us go back into full-scale pandemic mode, but I guess it wouldn't hurt to know, A, whether the new vaccine that supposedly is coming out this fall would be targeted towards Pirola, what the chances are that Pirola would be here, what masking protocols we might put in place in various other topics.
You missed the COVID conversations. So,
Not really, Frank, but since
yeah, no, I hear you. No, all good questions. Yes, we are certainly seeing an increase in cases across the board. We saw an increase in the summer. We did expect this, right? We do expect that there's going to be waves of COVID as we move into the future, similar to we've seen in the past. What we're trying to get our arms around a bit of, will it be seasonal waves? Meaning, will it come in the cold weather months like flu does, or will it be some other, kind of model of wave across the years? So we're still trying to figure that out. So having seen cases kind of creep up this summer, it still adds a little bit of uncertainty to that. But to your question about the vaccines, I haven't seen the data on the newest vaccine yet, so I can't really answer specific questions about what it will be protecting against. But as soon as we see that, we'll certainly be evaluating it and communicating whatever we can to the community related to it. As far as kind of contingency plans on what we will be doing as a county, unfortunately, uptake on even booster doses, the existing booster doses, has not been strong. So there is availability, whether it be at a local pharmacy or through your doctor's office. So we're not currently, preparing for any type of mass vaccination efforts because there will likely be enough capacity in the existing system. We do offer COVID vaccines as part of our Friday vaccination clinics at the health department. So if folks can't get it someplace else or would choose to come through us, there is an opportunity there, and they can call and make an appointment to do that. I think we're likely going to see the COVID boosters be something that is an annual recommendation similar to flu. I think at some point in the future, not this season, but perhaps next year or beyond, we might see those vaccines combined. So rather than folks having to get 2, they might be able to get 1. So there's just a lot to still be, discovered through the science as this evolves. I guess to your last point, Deborah, about masking, our recommendations really haven't changed and likely won't unless something, really significant happens in the community. We do expect there will be COVID cases. We do think there's an opportunity for us to educate people about how to limit spread, and it's the same public health messaging we've been doing for decades, and we talked ad nauseum about during COVID, washing your hands, keeping distance, staying home when you're sick, adding in wearing a well-fitting mask, particularly for those that might be most vulnerable with underlying health conditions. All of that is still in play, and we wouldn't recommend changing any of that at the moment. If something were to change with the severity of the disease and hospitalizations began to go up and, the thing we hope we don't have to talk about, deaths, happening, then, we would, as we have throughout, evaluate what, the appropriate steps are. But, at this point, I think it's really more about education and making information available to people as best we can. And obviously the community is going to have to respond or react in the way that they think is most appropriate with the information we're able to provide.
Thank you.
Veronica Pillar?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Frank. On the topic of masks, I've been hearing even before this latest, apparent uptick in cases from several constituents who are, who for the most part are immunocompromised and vulnerable, who are scared or, not irrationally scared to go to the hospital or to go to doctor's offices because there's no mask mandate there anymore. Is that something we would ever consider bringing back, or what would it take to require folks to mask in medical settings? I mean, all these people are of course they're wearing their own masks, but as hopefully we all got educated on, that's not all that you need.
Yeah, so I think, I don't think we're close. And if you remember, mandates in healthcare settings wasn't a local issue. It wasn't a local mandate. It was a state mandate. And I don't know that we're going to get, I don't foresee us getting to a point where we're going to feel it's necessary to mandate locally something like that. The enforcement, all the things that go along with it, quite honestly, I just don't think there's enough benefit for the effort that would require. I think that the issue for those that are immunocompromised or that feel at risk going into particularly healthcare settings, one, having a conversation with your healthcare provider, letting them know your concerns. The best thing you can do is wear a well-fitting mask, right? Those KN95s, as we've talked about before, they are designed to protect you, whereas the surgical masks are designed to limit spread to others if you happen to be a carrier. So, if our healthcare systems are taking appropriate steps about people not working when they're ill, doing frequent hand washing, which was things they did already, not necessarily hand washing, but certainly with sanitizers. They're taking steps to help protect folks that come in. But if you have a particular issue, underlying condition, and really feel strongly about it, the option at this point is to have a conversation with your healthcare provider, let them know your concerns, and hopefully they'll be able to work something out with you. But I don't foresee mandates being something on the near horizon, and there would really need to be some significant change in the severity of the disease and its impact on our community before we'd consider something like that.
Any other questions or comments for Frank? Okay, thank you, Frank, for joining us. We appreciate it. Oh, Rich John?
Yeah, sorry to go back to privilege of the floor, but Veronica shared with me that I gave the wrong date for the Emergency Preparedness and Safety Fair, and I'd like to give the right one, actually. I had put on my calendar the 6th of September. It's the 16th, and it's from 10 to 2 on that date. So please ignore what I said earlier, and please come on the 16th and consider donating blood. Thank you.
Thank you, Rich. Next, we will move on to County Administrator Lisa Holmes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a number of hiring updates this evening as well as a budget update, but I'll start with the fun one. I'm pleased to be bringing forward Leo Riley's appointment as Director of Recycling Materials Management for the Legislature's confirmation. Leo's worked in the Recycling Materials Management Department in various roles since 2007. He's taken on greater levels of responsibility throughout his career, most recently serving as the interim director. And prior to coming to Tompkins County, Leo worked as a district manager of waste management, a hauling recycling facility in Binghamton. He brings 30 years of industry knowledge, financial experience, contract and staff management skills, to lead the department and engage the community to achieve Tompkins County's aggressive waste reduction goals. Our search panel was made up of department heads, county administration staff, representative from the Environmental Management Council, as well as legislators Ann Corman and Randy Brown from the Peak Committee. And since Leo lives in Homer in Cortland County, I'm also requesting a residency waiver for his appointment.
Ann Corman?
Thank you, Madam Chair and Administrator Lisa Holmes. I'd like to move to confirm the appointment of Leo Riley as the Recycling Materials Management Director and to waive his residency requirement in doing so.
Okay. Second by Randy Brown. Okay. Would you like to make comment, Ann Corman?
Yes. As Lisa said, Leo's career, as far as I know, his entire work career has been in waste and recycling management. And he's always looking for ways to improve the processes, increase efficiencies, overseeing quite a few capital projects, which is really important to that unit, all the while staying within the department budget. And he always encourages, supports the department's staff. And an example of that was a recent tour that administration and several legislators took with Leo guiding us. And one of the things that I really liked about it is that Leo didn't speak a lot. He just brought different staff there to show what they do in their different departments and to really let them explain that. And so he's really great at letting people shine and explain, and lifting up his employees. So I wanted to thank you, Leo, for doing that and for all that you do. And while I'm just mentioning the tour, I wanted to thank your staff, Kat, Jeremy, Nate.
And that is unanimous. Congratulations. Leo, would you like to come up and say a few words?
Very happy man tonight. Thanks, everyone. I really appreciate the opportunity. I'm looking so forward to working closer with Lisa, Norma, and Bridget. And yeah, happy man. One thing I just want to make mention of, and I wasn't planning on it, but Ithaca Gun came up tonight. It was, I believe, I got thinking about it, it was 1981 or 1982. I serviced containers of scrap metal at Ithaca Gun back in 1981. So yeah, I brought back some memories. So I do have a connection here in Tompkins County and have had for quite some time. But I'm very much looking forward to continuing in the role that Barb Ekstrom had for like 38 years. I can probably promise you I won't spend another 38 years as the director, but just that fact of me being the second director of that department is very special to me. So thank you, everyone, for all your confidence.
Thank you. Anything else for you, Lisa?
A few other updates, yes.
Okay.
This will not require confirmation, but I just wanted to announce that after a search process conducted by the Highway Department, Jeff Smith, Heather Chappell was offered the position of Weights and Measures Director, and she started in her new role as of today. Heather had worked for over 4 years at the Tompkins County Recycling Materials Management Facility as the Senior Weigh Scale Operator, and she holds a Weighmaster license. So with the charter change that was passed in June, the appointment and supervision of weights and measures now falls under the authority of the Highway Director. But I wanted to share this update as I know many of you are interested in the status of weights and measures. And I also just wanted to state for the record that Heather also lives outside the county, and I've approved a residency waiver for her appointment. And then today was also the first day of the county's new Chief Equity Diversity Officer, Charlene Holmes, and I'm glad many of you had the opportunity to meet her before today's meeting. And then I just wanted to provide a quick update on the 2024 budget preparations. I will be providing a presentation at our next legislature meeting on September 19th, and we're holding a budget training session on the new software for legislators on Friday, September 15th at 11:30 here in Chambers. When I say we, I mean Norma. And I just, as we go about the preparations, I don't think I can overstate what a challenging budget year this is going to be for the county. In addition to the unfunded mandates that we know about from the state, but among the mandate costs we're facing are the rise in safety net cases, which impacts costs for emergency housing. We have instituted a soft hiring or a flexible hiring freeze on unfilled positions in order to meet our 2% budget target. And also at the last meeting, I discussed a reduction in the 2024 sales tax estimates as a result of an error in the figures we received for the actual sales tax revenues for 2022, where we hadn't, the disbursements to municipalities had not been subtracted. After a second meeting with finance, we discovered a further discrepancy, and this one is related to the county's programs related to the city in the county city sales tax agreement, which, as you've seen the chart, it is not an easy agreement to understand. So the finance department was including that funding for county programs related to the city as county sales tax funding. However, these disbursements are not included in the county budget, and those funds are not included in the county budget. So we've now identified and adjusted for this discrepancy. However, this is another discrepancy that is not in our favor and amounts to an additional $2 million. So our estimate for the 2024 sales tax revenue is now $4 million lower than estimated in our budget retreat. So it's approximately 43 million instead of 47 million. I just wanted to make you all aware of this as we go into our budget discussions. I'm going to be discussing this in further detail at our next meeting, but I wanted to bring you along in the journey as we go forward. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have on this.
Thank you, Lisa. Any questions for Lisa? Mike Lane?
Not as much a question, but maybe a comment about things that are happening, and that is, I can remember when we offered a position to a new employee, we would expect them to live in Tompkins County. Or if they weren't there at the time the offer was made, would come back into the county within, I don't know, 6 months or something like that. It's funny how the world has changed. There is a shortage of qualified people. Counties and other municipalities are actively seeking to fill jobs, and they're hard to come by. We know that. We've had searches that have failed. We've had searches that have been successful. But we've had to take basically your recommendation to allow waivers for people living outside the county. And I think that's a good thing. I'm not hearing anything from my constituents, I don't know about others, because we're hiring folks that live in Cortland County or Cuba County or somewhere else, as long as they're coming in here and getting the work done. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Thank you, Mike. Randy Brown?
Yes, I hope we don't get any more reports like that on this. Auditors audit our books. And would this be something the auditors would typically look at? I mean, how could that not be spotted? Or is it just because it was reporting error?
Yeah, I don't think it's something that would be found in an audit. It's really, I think a training and communication issue between the departments. Yeah.
Explain it the way you explained it to me, because that reported one thing.
Yeah, so I think it's really, and I don't think necessarily that the way that the previous finance director was accounting for these, the funds coming in, they are indeed, can be considered county funds because they are going to pay for county programs of importance in the city per the city sales tax agreement. So it could be interpreted that they are county funds. However, those funds aren't included in the county budget. They're already pre-committed to these programs. So it's really, an interpretation. I hope that.
It's like gross and net. Yeah.
So it wasn't correct.
Right.
Any other questions for Lisa? Okay, thank you, Lisa. Next, we're going to move on to Holly Mosher from the County Attorney's Office. Okay, no report this evening. And any questions or comments for Holly? Okay, thank you, Holly. Next, and just to let everyone know, Lori Scarrett is not with us this evening. And unfortunately, fortunately for Drew, he's on vacation. And so Deb Dawson is going to give us a small report from that department.
Yeah, Lori reached out to me this morning. She had, unfortunately, a death in her family and was called away. So her updates, the cash management and investment policy will be on the agendas of GO and BCP coming up, and then we will look at that at our next legislature meeting. Insero is supposed to get a draft final budget audit to Lori either this Friday or next Monday, and that is tentatively on our BCP agenda for 9/11, geez. And it will be before the legislature also at our next meeting. And then the only other thing is that we got casino revenue reports from Del Lago and Tioga Downs. Revenue for the second quarter was down 2.65% year over year. But year to date, revenue is up 4.44% year over year. And apparently, Del Lago accounts for most of the following revenues. Tioga Downs seems to be doing just fine.
Question for our acting finance director. No, I'm just trying. Question for Deborah?
Thanks, Deborah. I don't know if you can answer this.
Probably not.
Okay, never mind then.
No, go ahead. I'll try.
We'll give it a try. So somebody in the town of Ulysses, the supervisor asked me, sent me an email regarding casino revenue and that money going towards youth services. As far as I was aware of, and I don't know all the details of our finances, but I've tried to learn them and keep track of them. But as far as I know, we don't have any, there's no casino revenue directed, earmarked towards any youth sports services, right?
That's how
it goes to the general fund.
I think that we have made a policy, and I think it's a prudent policy, to consider casino revenue as a gift from the sky, and we do not budget it. We only use it for one-off things because it's one-time revenue and completely under.
Okay, great. I see everybody shaking their head in agreement. Okay, thank you.
No, that's not correct.
Lisa?
We're not earmarking it for specific services, but we are budgeting for it.
Are budgeting for it now?
Yes.
Okay, but not earmarking it.
But in a very conservative way.
Right, we use it for
Below what
one time.
historically we've received.
How do you budget for it when you don't know when the budget's going?
We looked at, last year, we looked at least a 3-year trend line, and we upped it last year for the 2023 budget. So I think that we are still, we're still on target to meet that goal.
Well, see, you learn something.
You're fired, Deborah.
No, I don't want the job, Shauna.
Greg Mezzi and then Mike Lane.
Yeah, I think this past budget season, we significantly upped it from historically where it was very, very low, and it was sort of treated as gravy, as you described. I don't know if you use that term, but extra. And this was, I remember the distinct conversation because I was a proponent for budgeting it if there's a historical trend to, I mean, sales tax too, right? We take a historic trend and that's how we figure it out. So, I mean, casino revenue, I don't think should be any different. And I think that was a lot of the conversation during the budget time last year because it jumped up quite a bit from where it historically had been significantly under budgeted, intentionally.
Yeah, and I think we ought to be careful, though. Yeah, it's up for the first 2 quarters, year after year. It remains to be seen whether the decrease this quarter, which is significant, is the beginning of a downward trend. I am aware that I keep getting stuff from Tom DiNapoli saying, you know, casino revenue is not the answer to anything, and it's very unstable, and, you know, the casinos around the state their performance and production of the tax revenues is really diverse. So I think it's prudent to not count on it.
Mike Lane and then Ann Corman.
Deb, you're exactly right. What we used to do, we didn't budget it at all. We just said, if this comes in, we'll look at it as a way of
Well, that's how we bought the
one-time spending that we
Center.
might be able to do. I think it was maybe 3 years ago or so, county administrator then recommended some of that money in order to cover some shortfalls. We also had the tax cap, for example, be budgeted into the budget. But usually it's been done pretty conservatively so that if something happens, and it can, you're exactly right, what you're saying, the comptroller is telling us. We've got negotiations going on right now with the Seneca Indian Compact with the state of New York. It could result in a casino in Rochester. And you're very close to having the casinos open in New York City. Now, how those would affect the Downs and Del Lago, Turning Stone, any of those upstate, who knows? If people don't have to travel to those overseas shows or whatever.
Randy, I have you on my list. I don't know if that's from previous. Okay, sorry, thank you. Ann Corman?
Thank you for letting me just make another comment. So I did just now find an article. It's regarding funds for sports programs for underserved youth, and this is from New York State. It says for the fiscal year 2023 and annually thereafter, revenue from mobile sports wagering are distributed as follows, and one of them is $5 million to fund the sports program. So I'll refer the supervisors to our state reps. It's obviously.
And Lisa
not
Holmes
going-
has a response here.
Okay.
Well, just in from Bridget Nugent, who formerly was at Youth Services. She was clarifying that online sports betting money goes from New York State to youth sports, and it flows through our Youth Services Department from the Office of Children and Family Services, New York State, as a supplement to their regular funding for youth development.
So it's not the casino money that we get, it's
Online sports betting. So that person perhaps could be referred to Kate Shanks Booth, our Director of Youth Services.
Great, thank you.
Anything else to report, Deborah?
absolutely not.
Okay, thank you. Let's see here. Are there any resolutions to be added or withdrawn from the agenda? Rich John?
Resolution J, was not dealt with at the Public Safety Committee. It was sent back, so that should be withdrawn.
Thank you. And let's go ahead and move on to our consent agenda. And resolutions and appointments to be voted on as a group unless any member of the legislature requests that a resolution or appointment be instead included separately and individually as part of the business of standing or special committees. Appointments, ID 11813, Soil and Water Conservation District Board of Directors, George Trutt, Jr., Grange member, term expires December 31st, 2024. Climate and Sustainable Energy Case Board, Martha Robertson, member, term expires December 31st, 2024. Health and Human Services Committee, Resolution A, Budget Adjustments, Social Services, ID 11790. Resolution B, Budget Adjustment, Tompkins County Youth Services Department, Final 2023 State Aid Adjustments, ID 11837. Resolution C, Budget Adjustment, Social Services, Administrative Revenue Account Consolidation, ID 11883. Facilities and Infrastructure Committee, Resolution D, authorizing a capital lease and service agreement with Tompkins Consolidated Area Transit, TCAT, Inc., ID 11826. Resolution E, authorizing a capital lease and service agreement with Gadabout Transportation Services, Inc., ID 11827. Planning, Energy, and Environmental Quality Committee, Resolution F, acceptance of grant funding from the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation Municipal Waste Reduction and Recycling Program, ID 11865. Resolution G, Budget Adjustment, Department of Recycling and Materials Management, providing for the purchase of reusable bags, ID 11869. Can I have a mover for the consent agenda? Moved by Travis Brooks, seconded by Veronica Pillar. And all those in favor, please raise your hand. And that is unanimous. Thank you all. Next, we're going to move on to standing and special committees. Let's start off with Budget, Capital, and Personnel Committee. Deborah Dawson, Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to move Resolution H, adoption of the 2023-2024 operating budget for Tompkins Cortland Community College, ID number 11829.
Seconded by Mike Lane.
As you all learned from a recent presentation by Amy Kravnik and Bill Talbot, the college is not asking for an increase in sponsor county shares this year. It saddens me that in order to achieve that goal, they've used quite a bit of their reserves, but hopefully next year we'll be in a better position to give them more.
Great, thank you. Any questions for Deb Dawson? Okay, let's vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you, and we will be meeting next Monday, and among other riveting things on our agenda is the cash management and investment policy.
Okay, thank you. Workforce Diversity and Inclusion Committee, Veronica Pillar, Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. WDIC met on August 16th, and we got ready to go out and still working on some of the paper stuff, announcements for, posted publicly nomination forms for the Leslie McLean Claiborne Strength and Diversity Award, which I've spoken about before, as well as work on getting new employee recognitions for values and posters out. We also had a general discussion about accessibility and looking at our county resources to see where there might be barriers. This was not an attempt to launch a specific project. This is a huge, broad conversation. But started to discuss what to look there for, what's out there to help, and we'll be just continuing that as an exploration for now. Our next meeting is November something or other. Or no, sorry, that's not true. Our next meeting is October something.
Or other.
Yeah. We'll have more of these before then.
November, something or other, yeah.
Okay, any questions for Veronica? Thank you. Next is the Public Safety Committee. Rich John, Chair.
Thank you. The Public Safety Committee met, I think it was August 18th. We had a presentation from Tiffany Bloss from Suicide Prevention and Crisis Services that was on the 988 call number because it's been in use for the past year. And it does appear that it is meeting a real need in our community. The story about suicides in the United States is not really a very happy one. We've seen trends going up. And calls to 988 have gone up as well. It does seem like that was a really good step. This is the nationwide call number. Ms. Bloss told us about the specific efforts that Suicide Prevention and Crisis Services are providing in terms of not only responding to people in crisis, but also just having a support service for people who need to talk, so aren't necessarily in crisis, to avoid that happening. They also have a proactive call service where they are reaching out to people that need to be contacted because of past history. And they seem to be having pretty good impact. They cover 16 counties, including Tompkins. And they also have a training program if anybody's interested. So that was a very interesting presentation, I thought. We also had the sheriff and Harmony Ayers-Friedlander from Whole Health give a presentation on the CARE program. This is the Crisis Alternative Response and Engagement Team. And this has been a long time in the making. This is the joint sheriff's deputy and mental health counselor response team that is now going operational. And it's a pilot program to see how it works. It's, I believe, 5 days a week during the day. They determined that was probably when they would have the most calls. But this is something that we had looked at as part of reimagining public safety. So I'm very excited to see this made real. And the amount of work to design this program and to roll it out was just extraordinary. And we got a great presentation on where that stands and what they hope to do. So hopefully very soon we'll have some feedback on how this is working in our community. I think it's a real positive step. Then I just would note our jail numbers are 65 with 2 board outs. So we are back up a little bit from where we were last month, but relatively steady. And that's about it.
Any questions for Rich John? Veronica Miller?
Not a question, and this isn't directly about the meeting, but mentioning SPCS, this reminded me that they are having a community suicide prevention week thing launch event on the Commons on Saturday, September 16th from 11 to 3 p.m. It's the Chalk the Walk kickoff. There will be drawing with chalk. There will be prizes. There will be music. There will be the GIAC jumpers, who I got to see at Pride Month, and they're wonderful. So yeah, come on down. I think this is the same day as the Emergency Preparedness Fair, but an hour later. So go to that and come to the Commons, and you'll have a good day.
Thank you, Veronica, for mentioning that. You know, just hearing the amount of effort and work that Suicide Prevention and Crisis Services does in our community, you know, certainly they're not a very high-profile organization, and most people will probably never call them. But for the people who need help, it's just a wonderful thing that we have that resource in our community. It was great to hear from her about what they do. So yes, please, September 16th, go give blood and go down to the Commons.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
Oh, I have a resolution, thank you.
Okay.
Let's see, this is Resolution I, appropriation from contingent fund, replacement pay and terminal pay reimbursement, Sheriff's Office, ID 11832, and I would move it.
Seconded by Lee Shirtliff. Any explanation of this, Rich?
This is a standard, basically accounting resolution that we do for departments where they have employees that are out on disability or have left and for a certain period of time.
Thank you. Deborah Dawson?
And for our hog-like monitors of contingent fund distributions, I would note that this total is $216,015.03.
Thank you, Deborah. Any questions or comments on the resolution? Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand. That's unanimous. Thank you. Any other questions for Rich John? Greg?
It's not for Rich John, but this, I guess, would be a question for our BCP chair. As one of those hawks of contingent fund spending, do we have a running list, or is that something that we could get a report on next meeting, what we spent to date out of contingent fund?
I'll be happy to ask Lori for that.
If it's convenient and fits in with the time whenever, it would be great to get an update.
I just brought it up because, periodically people question how we go through our contingent fund every year and have to add to it. When you're hacking off $200,000 chunks, it goes pretty fast.
I appreciate it.
It's a good thing we fired our acting finance director, Deb Dawson.
Yeah.
And Lori will be coming back.
We
You
were
might have
paying
gotten a
her?
different answer, Greg.
We didn't authorize that pay, did we?
No. Next is Health and Human Services Committee, Dan Klein, Chair.
Madam Chair, we met on August 21st, and we had several items. One was the opioid task force recommendations of how to spend the opioid settlement money, and we did pass the recommendations as they came to us. They'll next go to the Budget Committee, and then to this full legislature at our next meeting 2 weeks from today. When we had our report from J.R. Claiborne, Veteran Services, he introduced us to the second Veteran Services employee. It's now a department of 2 people instead of 1, and that is Michelle Baker, and her title is Information Aide. And then we heard from County Youth Services about the Open Doors program for runaway and homeless youth. This is a service that has not been provided in our county for, I'm guessing it's about 2 years at this point. The last program was not able to continue. It's taken a while to reboot it. We did just get that program just got its certificate of operation from New York State, and so the program should be in effect pretty soon, so that's good news. Next meeting is Monday, September 18th, 2 o'clock. We're going to have Dr. Marty Stallone, the CEO of Cayuga Health Systems, is going to be here. He's going to talk to us about mental health services that the hospital provides, and then we also are able to ask him anything else we want to ask him about. And that's how we do it.
Thank you, Dan. Any questions for Dan Klein? Or comments? Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Next, Housing and Economic Development Committee, Greg Mezzi, Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our next meeting is tomorrow, September 6th at 3 p.m. We have a few presentations on the agenda. We'll be reviewing our project approval requests as part of looking at 2024. We'll get an update from Ithaca Area Economic Development. We'll also have a expanding broadband access plan discussion report out. And then we also have some strategic tourism implementation grant items to review, and should be a action-packed meeting.
Thank you, Greg. Any questions for Greg Mezzi? Dan Klein?
Greg, do you have any information about the status of the request for proposals for the broadband plan?
I don't have an update at this time, but I'll make sure that we get one tomorrow and can report back either following that meeting to the full legislature or at our next legislature meeting.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for Greg Mezzi? Thank you, Greg. Next up is Facilities and Infrastructure Committee, Mike Lane, Chair.
Thank you. We will be meeting again on, I think it's the 21st, for our regular meeting. We haven't met since our last legislature meeting. We are going to have some resolutions tonight. A couple of them were controversial. One of them was controversial, let's put it that way, to some extent. Why don't I take the ones that we want to move first? Resolution K, resolution to authorize a 10-year lease agreement between the County of Tompkins and the History Center. That's 11871, and I so move.
Seconded by Rich John. Mike Lane.
I would just say that this increases the term of the lease from 5 years to 10 years so they can get some additional funding.
Are there any questions on the resolution? Okay. All those in favor, please raise your hand. That is unanimous. Thank you, Mike.
Then I have Resolution L, determining that 408 North Tioga Street in the city of Ithaca, the Red House, is no longer needed for public use. That's 11135. I so move.
Thank you. Seconded by Greg Muzzy.
And I would just comment on this, that this is following from the direction of the legislature, that we had some folks that are interested in it, and we wanted to give our county administrator the authority to move ahead. But first thing we have to do there is say that we don't need it for a public purpose. And that's what we're saying in this resolution.
Thank you, Mike. Any questions or comments on the resolution? Lee Sherliff?
For the public benefit, what do you foresee as the process now? This resolution, we authorize the administrator to seek proposals for the property.
Yeah, basically in the next resolution we're doing that. But maybe Lisa could respond to that right now. What we're seeing, I think the idea of putting it into a realtor's hands.
Yes, I think we need to work with a realtor. I've been in touch also. We are going to need to subdivide the property accordingly so that we know what we're putting up for sale, how much. But then work with realtor for request for proposals for realtors to work with to proceed with the sale of this property.
Any other questions pertaining to the resolution? Or comments? Okay, let's vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, all those against? Okay, it's 13-1. Thank you. That passes.
The other resolution in respect to the Red House is M, authorizing the real property sale of 408 North Tioga Street, ID 11141. I so move.
Seconded by Deborah Dawson.
Basically, it's what Lisa was saying, and it's basically what the legislature instructed that it wanted to see happen here, and that is to have this property sold. We debated in F&I some of the language, including trying to protect the county, in my view, a little bit more with how we might sell this or how we might subdivide it. But in the end, it was the resolution as proposed by the administration was passed.
Thank you, Mike. I have Randy Brown and Greg Muzzy and Rich John.
Yeah, when we looked at that resolution, I think it's written well, so it includes everything that needs to be included. My biggest issue there is what we're selling. And I think it's really important that we sell as little of the land as we have to. So I may draw that up. But I'm really anxious to see this move forward before the snow flies. I like the idea. I added in there the potential of auctioning it. I think there's a good way through request for proposals to let everybody that wants to buy it put an offer in. The quicker the better. And I think that the terms need to be very defined before we offer it for sale.
Thank you, Randy. Greg Muzzy.
Thanks. I just wanted to clarify, this was the one as amended, correct? I was trying to, okay, thanks. I was just trying to track my notes. And then the second question, because this will require subdividing the parcel, will the legislature or the F&I committee be able to see the proposed subdivision before it's submitted or approved or decided upon? And at what level will that subdivision be needing approval of either a committee or the legislature?
Lisa, you can respond to that, or I can. Whatever is proposed will have to be approved by this legislature.
I believe that we were looking, and the staff had proposed to subdivide in as small as possible, but within the what the minimum requirements necessary for the parcel.
So do we expect to see that will that go through committee, or will that just come back to the legislature?
It would go to committee, of course.
Yeah, I just want to be clear on the process.
So it would go back to committee and then it would go through the full legislature?
Yes.
Okay. Let's see here. Rich, John, Dan Klein, and then we'll circle back around to Randy.
I just was hoping to get clarification on the resolved paragraph and the reference to a ground lease. Is that we would get advice from our realtor on whether a ground lease would be a good idea, or is it requiring that there be an option for ground lease?
So why don't we let Lisa answer that?
And
Sounds like this was the touch point.
yeah,
Discussion around.
it was a discussion touch point. It's also a back and forth that I've had with Jay Franklin from Assessment, who suggests we could have a realtor present two options, and like we don't have to decide now if we don't want to. We could present options for outright purchase or ground lease.
And so it would be up to this legislature, the route that we want to take, and
Okay.
I'm assuming that will go through committee as well.
That's
Thank you.
ultimately yes.
Dan Klein?
When we sold the old library, we sought bids or proposals, and then the legislature, voted based on, I want to say what we thought was the best public good out of that. Is that possible, what's going to happen here, or is this just automatically the highest bid? I mean, what might happen next? Or am I jumping the gun?
I don't think they're the same, Dan. In that we were basically selling a property that we wanted to see developed in some way that would require deconstruction or demolition of the old library and a new building to be built, which is what's happened. We had requests for qualifications, and it was a different term that we used, and I can't remember exactly what it was. But as part of the request for qualifications, we asked for proposals as to what they would do. There were folks that had owner-occupied condominiums in there. There were apartments, there were commercial areas and different kinds of things. And we all looked at that, and we had a committee that was dealing with that directly. And it came to the full legislature for a vote in the end as to which developer to choose. As far as the Red House, basically there aren't a lot of things that can be done with it because it's an existing structure that's going to stay there. It's not going to be taken down. If it could be taken down, it probably would have been taken down by now. But it's going to probably be offices, could be single-family residential, I don't know what it'll end up, but it'll be using the existing structure.
Randy Brown, and then Greg Muzzy.
Yeah, I know the administration's got it on their plate right now, but I'd really like to see this, whatever it is we're going to sell, get to committee quickly, because it'll be October, then it's going to be November, so I don't know if it's possible to bring before the F&I committee what it is exactly we're going to sell at our next meeting or not. I'd like to see that.
Well, glad to hear that suggestion. Okay.
Greg Messy has his hand up as well.
Sorry, thank you. I don't want this to be a hand-in-hand conversation, but I do think that there's some merit to Dan's comment. I don't know what that looks like or feels like, but it feels like because of the public interest in the preservation of this structure, a private landowner does not have to do anything. They could buy it, keep it as is, and rent it out. It would be very affordable, right? They don't have the same sort of standards or things like that that we would have to rehabilitate it to. So it does beg the question, is there further merit to Dan's discussion? It's not going to hold me up voting for this resolution or moving the process forward, but I do think it's worth some level of consideration because this one will be a lifetime neighbor to potentially another county parcel, and it's already been said that it's an eyesore. It needs great rehabilitation. So I think we should make sure that whoever's purchasing it is qualified to or has a plan to at least rehabilitate it in some fashion. Because otherwise, we're just selling a building to offload it off of our plate and make it somebody else's problem who really may not even have any desire to do anything.
Okay. So that will, either way, it's going to go back to committee. We're going to have a real estate agent step in and provide us with some options, and then it will go back to facilities and infrastructure. Is that right, Mike Lane?
I believe that's going to be the process, yes.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay, let's go ahead and vote. All those in favor? And I just want to confirm, determining that 408, are we on L or M?
We're on M.
What meeting have I been in? No. Authorizing the real property sale of 408 North Tioga Street, ID 11141. All those in favor, please raise your hand. And those against, please raise your hand. That's a 13-1. That passes.
The other resolution we passed, I'll give you a little history here. I certainly have been criticized sternly about this, saying that F&I has taken much too long to come to a decision about building a county office building. I don't think we have. I think F&I has done a pretty good job about looking at things pretty thoroughly. On our last meeting, we had planned to have a thorough discussion of the Key Bank building, which had just been vacated in August. The Wiggins building, we had decided at a previous meeting, would be deconstructed as soon as the tenants' leases were completed. A request to extend those leases was not agreed to. There's not much we could do with those buildings other than we did buy them naturally, but not much we could do about them until the leases were up. We weren't really able to have a thorough discussion of the Key Bank building, which is a fairly solid building, because two of our members filed a member filed resolution and wanting to move directly ahead with the obtaining the engineers and starting to do the process for building the $40 million plus county office building. And once that came onto the agenda, it basically leapfrogged over the any really serious discussion regarding the Key Bank building. There are people who feel that this thing is taking too long. We just ought to spend $40 million and just go ahead and build this.
Point of information.
Please let me finish.
I can raise a point of correct amendment. Is the $40 million a factual number or estimate?
Well, it's an estimate, of course.
With any backing of that from any professionals in the field?
Well, from our county legislature, not legislature, our county administration, has been talking about a capital project here.
With a range?
What do you think it is, Greg?
I don't know. That's why we're hopefully going to vote on this resolution.
Yeah.
But that's...
Okay, if I could finish. So basically this leapfrogged over that. The other thing that you need to factor in here is our jail project, which is another potentially expensive project. I wish we had as many advocates for a jail project as we have for a county office building. We would have hopefully, and yes, we've been slow on the jail thing, but that's because this legislature said to F&I, pause what you're doing, and here's a listening committee that was chaired by Travis, and we'd like to have that information added into what we have done for the proposals for additions or renovations of the public safety building. We had that committee. Travis did a wonderful job leading that. We had some great focus groups and other
So
things.
Mike, since you're talking about the resolution, I've been advised that we should move the resolution on the floor so that we can all have that conversation.
Fine with me. I'll move it. No, I take it back. I'm not moving. I'm voting against it. Randy, would you please move it?
Sure. Since there won't be much discussion on it. This is resolution number N, resolution to proceed with space, architectural and engineering plans for a center of government in the 300 block of Tyler Street and 9.
Thank you, Randy. Seconded by Greg Muzzy.
Okay, it's on the floor. Then I'll just finish what I'm saying, and then you can all do what you want, say what you want. But the fact that we haven't actually had the discussion about the public safety building in committee, I think puts that as a disadvantage. And I think, I don't know, but it seems to me by forcing this resolution through on the center of government, that it is trying to get in ahead of the public safety building. And maybe we need to do both. Maybe we don't have money for either. This is an expensive project, and it's not going to be, yes, it's going to cost more in the future, but that's the reason that I voted against this. It's the reason I've been waiting, because I wanted to hear about the public safety building. We're going to have a joint meeting about that next week, and hopefully all the two committees will be there, and hopefully the others who can will attend it as well. So I don't feel that we should act on this resolution tonight as far as passing it. I think that we ought to delay it. And again, you can rake me over the coals for taking too long, and that's fine. But I've been doing it for the best, what I believe are the best possible reasons, and you can dispute that if you want. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Randy?
Yes, thank you. I respect, Mike, your comments and your leadership on that. The reason I wanted this to go forward is because I think the full legislature wants to discuss it and figure it out. I'm not excited about building a building. I want to make it as small as possible and cheap as possible, and make sure the right departments are going in it and all those things. But it's got to be built right. We're way down a road. We can't do a U-turn. We bought this property. We own it. Something's got to happen. And as of now, we're going to have 2 more properties that are going to sit there, which we can't really take down until we have a plan for what we're going to build. So I've got a lot of questions, and there's a lot of work that has to be done from here forward that I think we need to come to this point.
Thank you. Annie?
Thank you. I didn't think I'd be speaking so fast. I thought a lot of people in the queue, but so maybe I'll be the last speaker on this. We'll wrap it up. I look at this as our goal is we need more space for our many departments. And so this is a step in getting us there. So I'm going to keep it short. Be voting for this and happy to see it come to the floor.
Thank you. Greg Mezzi and then Lee.
One of the reasons why I'm supportive of this and encourage this to move forward through to the committee and to the legislature is because I think what this asks for is to get real detailed information, to really get, go through the plan with a fine-tooth comb, have some options, have the discussion, but really have sort of a path and a way forward that we then can all evaluate it and ultimately make the decision on what dollars leave the county, to fund this project or to not fund this project, right? Because we could get to that and we could get to the realization and we could, change course. That's a real possibility. But this really just starts the ball moving from discussion to planning. Yes, it is an investment, but I think it's an investment so that we can have sound financials and schematics and a plan and understanding of what this would look like with professionals, weighing in and consulting and advising us in the process. So that's where I see this, and ultimately, my goal is that whatever is built, small, large, expensive, inexpensive, better serves our community, and if that allows us to also better serve our staff, which in turn allows them to better serve our community, that's the ultimate goal. So I think through this conversation, we need to make sure that every decision that we make is in the best interest of serving those that we represent, all of those that we represent. And I think, getting the ball moving on a real plan with real numbers is what this resolution does, and that's why I'm supporting it.
Thank you, Greg. I'm actually going to take a quick break. I see that Arel is here, and get his opinion so that we can base our comments off of some of our staff opinion. I know that we recently did some work to our jail, and I would just like to, if Arel could weigh in on priorities as far as capital projects, what the expectancy for these renovations that we've done to our jail. If he could give us his professional opinion, I think that might be helpful for all of us.
Okay, hello. So on the public safety building, we are actually in the middle of doing the short-term improvements, a $4.75 million project. We've done exterior work, and we're actually planning in the next week to meet with jail administration, our contractors, and also our consultants to set the schedule for the interior work, it covers HVAC improvements, plumbing improvements, security and detention hardware improvements, flooring, ceiling, work of that sort. We had done a building condition assessment about 3 years ago, and from that, there were a lot of deficiencies, but we had to basically prioritize those improvements to what we could do within that $4.75 million worth of work. Now, the intent of the short-term improvement project was to buy us time until a decision was made to move forward with a larger project. And so we were looking for 5 years. Basically, these improvements would buy us 5 years of time. So as we're getting started on the work inside the building within the next month or so, the goal was basically that would get by us 5 years' time. In discussions with Lisa, that's what I indicated, that my recommendation is that prior to the 5 years from now, so 2028, that we could start some schematic preliminary design to look at the options that the legislature, should they desire to move forward with an improvement project, of a larger scale, to address the significant program deficiencies that exist space-wise, that we would be able to start on that design process. So I guess to answer your question is that there aren't any immediate building deficiencies that will not be addressed over, at least within this project. However, this project will not address any space deficiencies, those that have been identified through the work that we've done over the last several years, as well as the work that has been done by the jail working group.
Okay, thank you. And then I just have one question for Lisa so that we have access to the same information. Lisa, at this point in time, could we take on both projects in our budget?
It will be tight, and according to what I had shared at the last legislature meeting, we can take on both of those projects. It's going to take some prioritization on the part of county administration and the legislature to come up with plans that are going to be able to meet the needs of the county. So for instance, we could see fit to fitting these two projects in that time frame. But as it stands right now, we did not fit in phase 2 of the green facilities in that same.
Can you clarify when you asked that question, Jonah? Are you saying can we take on both projects simultaneously?
That's right,
Or
simultaneous.
seriatim?
Yeah. Can we do them at the same time?
What we were looking at was essentially the debt service load that the county would be responsible for in that trajectory, starting with the center of government and then adding on the public safety building after that, and without too much of an increase on the tax levy, and leveling that out over a trajectory over time. And based on that, it's going to be very tight in terms of taking on additional projects for.
So essentially, what I'm essentially asking is, if this legislature said we want to do the jail, the $40 million or $30 million jail, and we also want to go forward with the center of government, could we do both of them and start them tonight?
We couldn't start them both tonight, but we could start one this year, and we could start another in around 2028, 2029.
Okay. Okay.
And that's also using fund balance toward these capital projects.
Okay, thank you. Lee Shirtliff and then Rich John.
Let me ask a question on that point before I go to what I was going to say. At what impact to the tax rate could you take on both of those projects at these perceived numbers?
So I have to go back and consult the presentation that I went over at the last legislature meeting, I believe, but we're trying to do that to stabilize the tax levy contribution toward capital. And what we were looking at was the timeline at which we would not have to significantly increase the tax levy toward capital. If we were to do both tomorrow, we could not.
I don't mean to put you on the spot, but
Sure.
we can do anything we want within any range. And I guess that's where I'm coming back to tonight. And consistently said that I don't want to see options come off the table, but to me, passing this resolution, it casts the die. We're going to move forward with doing something on that site in 308 North Tioga Street, whether it's 10 million, 20 million, 30 million, or 40 million. And the resolution, as I read it, says that the charge is to come back with a final design. So, with respect to what Greg just spoke about, options that would be before us, well, we're really probably only going to see one option come back. Maybe there'll be some input on it. If I were on the legislature in 2019 and 2021, I probably would have voted for both of the resolutions to acquire the properties. But 2019 and 2021, a lot different circumstances than where I think we are today. And I get nervous when I hear the county administrator report that there's Well, a $4 million difference in the sales tax that, where we thought we were a couple of months ago. And that's not just $4 million this year, that's $4 million every year moving forward. That's the basis upon which the budgeting moves from year to year to year. So the financial position that we're in and some of the prognostications that are out there and the interest rates that we're looking at today, a whole lot different situation than where we were when the county started acquiring these properties. But it's not just the fiscal uncertainties that are bothering me at this point, but some other trends that I'm seeing. And I applaud you, Shauna, for bringing up the issue earlier regarding the homicide that occurred. And it points to a broader problem that I didn't see 4 years ago. And something that is bothering me is we move ahead, and it has to do with the situation of public safety here in the city, where we're looking to commit tens of millions of dollars. Now think about this just for a minute. The Cancer Resource Center, just a few blocks from here, is picked up and moved to Tioga Heights because there are concerns about the safety of the employees and the people servicing there. I was a little chastised maybe at the public safety meeting when I talked about shots fired about 500 feet from here. You can see the intersection through that window a couple weeks ago. Okay, near this courthouse, near this complex. Within the last week, you had a person arrested swinging a meat cleaver at Aldi's, just a few hundred feet from probably our most busy county office, the DMV. 15 months ago, our employees, some of our employees and our clients, on a Friday afternoon before Memorial Day weekend, witnessed 2 people shot in front of our DSS building. What happened afterwards? Well, we worked on 2 resolutions last fall, having to hire security and buy scanners at downtown county facilities, and we talked about having a comprehensive look at safety in our facilities. But the point was, we had to bring in safety measures at the public library and at the Human Services building. I'm not comfortable going back to my constituency and saying with a straight face or that I truly believe that this is the safest move in the interest of our constituents and our clients and our personnel. And I do hear from people that come downtown to use the county facilities, and I do hear from our employees that we don't feel comfortable today where we did 3 or 4 years ago. And yet, as I said, it just appears to me that by moving forward at this point, we're going to build down here as it is. And I'm not sure that today versus 4 years ago, it's the safest thing for us to do. I'm really hesitant. I'm not going to support the resolution, but there's a broader reason as to why I'm not going to support the resolution. And if we begin to see some things change, well, certainly my mind will change. There's where I'm at.
Thank you, Lee. Rich John?
Wow. This decision just seems to be getting more and more complicated. Let's see. I'm going to support this resolution, but Mike, I agree with what you're saying about we cannot forget our jail because there's real challenges there. Part of the reason for our meeting next week, the joint meeting between the Facilities and Infrastructure and the Public Safety Committee, is to talk about that timeline. And that was my takeaway from Lisa's presentation on our capital plan, that we do end up with a fairly steady capital expenditure each year if we phase these things carefully using some fund balance and starting them in a slightly staggered approach. 2029, I'm a little bit nervous that that might be too long a wait for our jail. But I want to hear more from Arel and others at our meeting next week. But if we can make it work with a steady capital program, you know, maybe that's the way to go. In regard to this resolution, I agree with the word final being a little troubling. I don't think what, you can call something final, it's not going to be final. And we're going to need to make some hard decisions. And maybe we don't go forward with the downtown facility, downtown office building. But if we don't have the planning function, I don't know how we make a considered decision there. And Lee, everything you said about public safety, I agree with, that there are things happening in our community that are not trending in the right direction, and we have to get hold of that. At the same time, I believe these are issues we can deal with. We can solve these issues, what's going on here. And frankly, I think there are some steps underway, such as the GIVE grant, that may really help us in approaching those issues more effectively. At any rate, we have committed, we bought the property, we need the office space, we do need a center of government. I'd like to see us proceed with this planning function, but let's not stress that word final. I also will caution everybody that it's likely you're going to see a very similar resolution coming forward from this joint meeting to do the same thing with the jail. And not to front load too much, but because the idea with the jail is to combine new construction with the existing facility, what we're going to try to do, I believe, is try to take advantage of this $4.whatever million spend we're doing now, so we don't lose those improvements to the structure. We don't lose the secure space where you spend a lot of money creating secure space, but to add to it in a functional way. To do that is going to take a tremendous amount of planning to do it well. If we do it really well, we may end up with a lower overall expenditure because we are able to reuse a lot of the existing space. So I'm not entirely opposed to taking more planning time for the jail, because we might end up with a much better, more cost-effective product, even if we're spending more on the planning. But that resolution is probably going to come to you very soon, so don't be surprised by it. But I think we should get our information on both projects and be prepared to make some very hard decisions. Thanks.
Thank you. I have Randy Brown, Deb Dawson, and Amanda Champion.
As I read the resolve, which I think is the most important thing here, it says that the county administration staff determine options for department placement, which is critical. We need to understand exactly what that is. We rent space to some other people. We rent space ourselves. And we have people who are in offices or in spaces that are too small. So we've got to do something. We have no choice. So I think that's really, that's going to take a little bit of time just to do that, right? And then the second one is, and we talked about this, that when you put these requests for proposals, it's not going to be just to the same architect that we've always used. It's going to be opened up to hopefully a lot of people that are interested in this, and I think that's why, and that's going to take a while, right? So we just need to, in the final design documents, probably will be the biggest challenge. It may say that, but a year from now, if we get to that point, I'll be impressed.
Thank you. Deb Dawson?
Yeah, before I say what I was planning to say, I just had a couple of remarks about points other people have raised. Lee, I appreciate your concerns about the situation of public safety in the city. But dear God, if this situation doesn't get addressed in relatively short order by the city beefing up the IPD, and the IPD actually doing its freaking job, we're in deep doo-doo. And the other thing we need to remember is that we already have most of our workforce down here. The question is, what kind of facility are we going to put in? And then the other issue I have with what I've heard is if at some point we allocated $4.75 million worth of improvements to the public safety building in order to buy us 5 years, well then 5 years is what it is. Why all of a sudden is it more urgent that we move forward more quickly? Those are just my reactions to things I've heard. And my main point, I think, is that to me it's kind of appropriate that we're talking about this the day after Labor Day. Maybe it's because I spent 30-some years working for the federal government and a couple of years working for county government in Buffalo. But, you know, public employees work hard. They're not always paid all that well. They're not always generally appreciated. We talk a good game in this legislature about how valuable our staff is. And let's face it, we're dead in the water without our staff. We're not out there providing the services that are mandated and the extra services that we provide. We depend on our employees to do that. And we're having a hard time getting employees now. I mean, it's not just us, obviously. It's the labor market's tight across the board. But, you know, as Mike pointed out earlier in our meeting, the last few hires that we've made have come in from outside the county because it's difficult to find people who come and do these jobs for us when they can't afford to live here. It behooves us, I think, to provide our employees with decent workspaces. I mean, I go up to administration, I go up to finance, I go up to HR, and we got people working in closet-sized offices with no windows. That's not an office, people, that's a cell. These people didn't get arrested for something. They work for us. It's time, I think, for us to put our money where our mouths are when we talk about how valued our staff is. And more to the point, I don't think that F&I has failed to explore our options in depth. I don't know if there's anybody here who hasn't seen the report that Lisa brought to F&I a couple months ago. She went through every single need that we have and every option that we have and detailed which particular option would address which particular needs. And building a new center of government was the only answer to most of the needs except for parking, and we're not even going to go there. You know, I think that we've had numerous opportunities. How many times over the last few years have we had executive sessions? And how many straw polls have we taken on this issue? I mean, the main reason I think Greg and I brought this resolution forward is it's time to get it before all of us officially for official vote and official action. If y'all don't want to do this, fine. But consider the alternative. We have soaked a lot of money into this and a lot of time and staff resources. And we've watched the Red House deteriorate because it's empty. And it's very difficult to maintain a building that's empty. There's nobody on site to tell us when something's wrong and needs to be fixed. Now we're going to have 2 more empty buildings. We're not in the business of holding and managing empty buildings. So if we're not going to build this thing down here, then we need to sell those buildings. And we need to move on to another plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah.
Amanda Champion?
Yeah, thanks. I'd like to make a motion to remove the word final in the second to last line of the resolution, which is on page 53, line 7.
Second.
And I guess I would just say, I don't think that we're going to be getting the final design anytime soon. I think Randy said something like that. We'll be getting numerous options, and it will come back to the legislature, and we will make a decision going forward about what we want to happen. And so I think taking the word final out makes sense.
That's really neat.
Who was the secretary?
Can I comment on it before, or I just say something? Yeah, sure, it's friendly. I don't think it makes a difference because I don't think you get to final without options. So either way, I think it says the same thing. So if it makes others feel better, go with that.
Okay. Sure, unless anybody finds it not friendly.
So anyone find it not friendly?
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments, Amanda? Okay. Mike Sigler?
Yeah, I wasn't going to say anything, but somebody did ask me, this is really more for my constituents than you folks, because somebody did ask me how I was going to vote tonight, and I said I don't know, and it surprised them, I think. Listen, I had mentioned I would have liked just a couple of other options. I lost that vote, really. Not that it was a vote, but I lost that argument, and that's fine. So, I mean, I can't escape the idea that we need to move the DA. We need to move the clerk. There's X amount of room needed for that. But I also look at the benefits, too. Talked to a constituent about this. We're going to supposedly move some departments that we are not leasing space for into this building. The constituent said, well, it's better to lease from yourself than it is to lease from somebody else. And I thought that was a pretty solid argument as well. So, yeah, I don't look at this as a final decision. But, I mean, how much is this thing going to cost? I don't know. I mean, it would be nice to know that. We do own the land, so as Deborah said, we're not going to do something with the land and sell them. So these are the things that I think are inescapable. If we're going to do it, then let's kind of move the ball forward a little bit. And everything that Lee said, though, I think is correct. That is a much larger discussion, though. I mean, and hopefully that will be one, as we work on this plan, that we will discuss. Do we want to keep investing money in the city of Ithaca? If some of these security concerns aren't met, and I guess that's a discussion with the city. I mean, the city must know that. So I don't know why. Maybe they are trying to address it now. I'm not sure. But, so that's where I am. I'm going to support this. We'll move the ball a little bit, and we'll see what we get to.
Ann Corman? Okay. Anyone else? Okay. So I will just say it was not my strategy to not give you guys a break this evening. I didn't realize where we were in our agenda. So, yeah, let's go ahead and vote.
Roll call, please.
Thank you.
Mike Sigler? Yes. Travis Brooks?
Yes.
Randy Brown?
Yes.
Amanda Champion?
Yes.
Susan Curry?
Yes.
Deborah Dawson?
Yes.
Rich John?
Yes.
Dan Klein?
Yes.
Ann Corman?
Yes.
Mike Lane?
No.
Greg Mezzi?
Yes.
Veronica Pillar?
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff?
No.
Shauna Black?
Yes.
12 ayes, 2 noes, motion passes.
That was a big one. Okay, what is the will of the legislature? Do we want to
Well, let me
take?
just say, I don't think I have anything else in the
Okay.
facilities committee unless there's anyone has other questions.
When is our joint meeting?
1 o'clock on the 12th, right?
The 12th, Tuesday.
Thank you.
There's 2 paper agenda packets in your box.
At 1 o'clock.
I got one with BCP.
I think they just got put in.
Deborah, they were put in just before the meetings.
Oh, okay.
Okay, do we want to finish the committee reports? We have 3 more committee reports. Okay, let's go. Government Operations Committee, Amanda Champion Chair.
Yep, I'll be Chris. We're meeting on Thursday. We're going to talk about many of the policies that Deborah mentioned that we're also going to talk about in BCP, plus some other policies. We are going to have an update from Barry Dunn, our strategic operations, strategic planning operations, however you say it. So they're going to be here to tell us how things are going with that. We're going to have some assessment updates, and we are going to talk once again about the rules of the legislature. And that's it. We meet on Thursday at 10.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for Amanda? Okay, thank you, Amanda. Next is Planning, Energy, and Environmental Quality Committee, Ann Corman Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We met on Monday, August 21st, And we had a lot of information from our Department of Recycling and Materials Management, a couple of grants they accepted, and an update on the Rethinking Waste in Tompkins County. And they had 35 written comments from the plan, or in response to the plan, and they are working on their responsiveness summary to those comments. And then they send that draft to the DEC, and then we wait for the DEC to send it back for approval. So over the next couple of months, I'm hoping that the plan will be approved. And we had a presentation from administration regarding the project approval review forms. And let's see what else here. One thing that was mentioned from the recycling and materials management was that the Hillview Road landfill, the testing that was approved a little while back regarding PFAS, they did detect PFAS in some of the wells, and so we didn't have the exact data. At this point, they're going to be coming to Peak next month to give us a report. I asked for that to be included in our agenda. And they're also going to be, or maybe have been already, send that information to the Hillview Road Landfill Committee or board. Is it board?
Citizens Advisory Committee.
The Citizens Advisory Committee. Thank you. And a resolution that we had passed in the committee of July 17th, restructuring the solid waste annual fee for university, colleges, and similar institutions. I appreciate everybody's patience. We hope for that to come to the next legislature meeting, and administration is still working and having conversations, and some legislators are also on that task force. So we're seeing as much rocks are overturned as possible, enough options are looked at, and so it's going to be one of those things. Nobody's going to be happy, then we know we have a compromise type thing. But I really appreciate everybody's time and energy to look into this. And let's see, today I and Legislator Curry, we went on a Discover Cayuga Lake tour sponsored by Senators Leah Webb and Senator Rachel May, and Assemblywoman Anna Kellis, and got to see the floating classroom, which I've always wanted to go on. They we had a presentation regarding toxic, harmful algal blooms in Cayuga Lake, and it just happened to be that today there were 7 reports of HABs, as the abbreviation is, which is the most so far this year reported today around Cayuga Lake. So please make sure you check out if you're going to go swimming, if they're open. And one of the things that I heard somebody ask the director of the floating classroom, what do they think about the condition of the lake? And he said it's it's at the brink. He said. So we really need to make sure we do everything that we can. But he was
at the brink of what?
That the brink of, as far as it being healthy or not, because of HABs, also because of the temperature increasing, and this other thing that I'll talk to you about at I'll get into that. At our next meeting on September 18th at 10 a.m., we're going to have a representative, John Dennis from Clean Cayuga Lake Environmental Action Now, and that's an advocacy group supporting the health of Cayuga Lake. Cargill Salt Mines has been put up for sale, and so it's kind of the way that I look at it is it's like the enemy you know. So we don't know now what's going to happen, and that to me and to a lot of people, that's the greatest environmental danger to the lake. if they collapse, if someone takes a different use of them. So there was some talk today about trying to urge the DEC to not allow another use to decommission the salt mines that are under the lake. Because that, if there was a collapse or salt got into the lakes, it's some way leached into there, it would pretty much kill everything alive in the lake. And also could affect drinking water, which there's at least one well that is now has brine instead of drinking water. So that'll be a lively discussion at our next meeting. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Ann. I have Greg Mizzi and then Mike Sigler.
Yeah, I was going to ask you this off, or I guess outside of this forum, but since you brought it up, could we possibly have someone from Cargill at that meeting as well? Do you think it's important when we have these conversations to have two viewpoints or balance, so that we can not just hear one perspective, but we can have the most informed perspective, so that we can ultimately make a decision based on both sides of an argument. I'm just, well, if we're going to be asked to weigh in, if we're going to hear from one side, I think it makes sense to hear the other, or allow someone else to respond to anything that anybody would be making, any accusations or assertions or factual, perceived factual comments about, that we give the party a chance to potentially respond.
I'll ask. It's not going to hurt. It'd be great if somebody could come, because we'll be talking about, the sale, what potential buyers there might be, what we know up to that date. I'll ask.
Thank you, Ann. And then Mike Sigler.
Yeah, I think that'd be terrific if somebody from Cargill will come, just because I think a good part of what you just said is just factually incorrect. There's absolutely no linkage between the mine and the lake whatsoever. In fact, the mine is a half mile underneath the lake. It's on level 7. There are 6 other salt seams above that mine, which also are not connected to the lake. So to act as if even a collapse would somehow solidify the lake is factually incorrect. So that would be great if you had somebody from Cargill. I'd like to remind folks that Cargill Mine provides 400 jobs in this community. It's worth about $170 million a year in economic activity. It provides most of the salt, I think, for New York State. That's the largest contract. That keeps our roads clear in the winter. I don't know where folks think that salt is going to come from. In Canada, maybe. But that will basically blow all the salt budgets for our municipalities and our county. If I had any fear of Cargill somehow solidifying the lake, I would certainly state it. When they wanted to pump natural gas into the caverns in Seneca Lake, I said, I don't think that's a good idea, because there was fracturing there. That is not the case with our lake. The glacier simply didn't dig that deep into the salt seams. Like I said, just if you know nothing about science, right? If we're at level 7 mining salt, and there's a level 6 and a 5 and a 4 and a 3 and a 2 and a 1 all above that, and those aren't leaching into the lake, then from a safety aspect, this has no issue. And when we're talking about groundwater contamination from salt seams,
well water,
that's your water table. This is very distant from the water table.
Why don't you come to Peak, and we're going to have some experts there.
Are you going to have experts? Because John Dennis is not an expert.
Why don't you come to Peak, and we'll discuss it then.
John Dennis is not a
scientist.
scientist.
Discussion we're going to have at Peak.
Okay, that would be fine, I guess.
Any other comment? Rich, John.
Yeah, we probably should just move on, but I would add my voice saying Cargill has been a longtime employer and responsible business in our community. And I'm not aware of any issues with damage to our lake, which we should be really careful about by Cargill. I think it's perfectly appropriate to get viewpoints and to learn if there's a danger. But we do need to be careful in that I'm not sure that Cargill has done anything wrong here, and I'd hate to leave that impression with anybody. Thanks.
Any more comments? Okay, let's move on to the Community Recovery Fund Advisory Committee. Dan Klein, Chair.
Thank you. Everything is going along really smoothly. There are no major issues, and so that I have nothing to report.
Thank you. Any questions for Dan? And any individual member filed resolutions? No? Next, we have the minutes of our previous meeting, August 15th, 2023, moved by Randy Brown, seconded by Rich John. Any questions, comments, corrections? See none. All those in favor of passing the minutes, please raise your hand. That's unanimous. Thank you all. We do have some unfinished business with an executive session. And in accordance with Article 7, Section 105 of the Public Officers Law, this body will enter into executive session for the discussion of two matters concerning the medical, financial, credit, or employment history of a particular person or corporation, of matters leading to the appointment, employment, promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of a particular person or corporation, and the proposed acquisition, sale, or lease of real property, or the proposed acquisition or securities, or sale or exchange of securities held by such public body, but only when publicity would substantially affect the value thereof. I do not expect we will take any action out of executive session. Can I have a motion, please? Deborah Dawson, seconded by Veronica Pillar. All those in favor, please? That's unanimous. Thank you. And why don't we return at 8:35?